What's good, family, and welcome back to another episode. As the season keeps rolling along, we got to keep knocking out these off-season plan episodes. And if you clicked on this video right here, you already know we got a legendary team, but we also got a legendary guest, man. This guy is one of the biggest and best journalists covering the NBA right now. He's currently a contributor to GQ Sports. He's had his article published by Bleacher Report, New York Times, LA Daily. We got a legend in the building, man. My guy, Howard Beck. How you doing, Howard?
Doing great, John. Good to see you again. It's been a while since we hung out for a bit in Vegas at the Sports Business Classroom in Summer League, but great to see you here.
Absolutely, man. It is great to see you, Howard. Yeah, just like how Howard was saying, we met at the Summer League, the Sports Business Classroom, man. That was a absolute great experience. So if you guys, any people out there looking to break into media space, definitely check out Sports Business Classroom for every summer. They got Vegas popping off, and this year we were lucky enough to have Howard come, and then Howard was cool enough to, because we exchanged contacts, and now we here, man, talking about the Warriors, man. So I'm happy you're here, my brother, and let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So
yeah,
the Warriors finished with a record of 44-38, finished as the 6th seed, beat the Kings in 7 games, and then lost to the Lakers in 6. So my first question to you is, as a Warriors fan, like, how were you feeling about the year? Were you happy with the way the year went, or were you disappointed?
Yeah, well, obviously, I wouldn't identify myself as a Warriors fan or fan of any particular team. I do follow them more closely than some teams, partially just because of the fact that they have been the story and the team of the last decade, essentially, where we're getting pretty close to a 10-year run here, where they have been, if not the defining team, certainly one of the defining teams. I do have Bay Area roots, so once upon a time in my childhood, maybe I was a bit of a Warriors fan, but they were pretty low on the radar back when I was a kid because they weren't that great. I would just say, as an observer, as somebody covering this league, and as somebody who, I do have a lot of experience with the Warriors professionally because I have written a ton about them. I've got great relationships with a lot of key people out there, and so I feel like I got a better feel for them than a lot of teams. Look, they broke through to win another championship, that 4th title in 2022, in a way that nobody really saw coming. I certainly hadn't seen that coming. I had, like a lot of people in the media or out in NBA fandom, I had kind of written them off, figuring that once Durant was gone, he had gone down with the ACL, of course, and once Clay went down and then went down again, I thought they'd be good again. I wasn't sure they'd ever be contenders again, no matter how much respect I have for Steph or for that organization. And so the 2022 championship just kind of raised the bar again. And I think it made us all feel like, well, we're going to expect it as long as Steph remains at this MVP level, and he still is, we should pencil them in, year out, as a contender. And I think still in some regard they were, right? 44 wins does not say contender. Second round loss in the playoffs does not necessarily broadcast contender. But I think you have to look at last season and remember some of the details that, as we speak here in early September, even I had kind of forgotten. So I had to go and look this stuff up again. But maybe they're a 50-win team if Andrew Wiggins doesn't miss the last 25 games to deal with family stuff. He only played 37 out of 82 because of injuries and then that long absence at the end with personal stuff. Maybe they're a 50-win team if Draymond doesn't punch Jordan Poole in the preseason, which everybody downplayed during the course of the season. But when the season was over, everybody, including Draymond, including Steve Kerr, everybody said, that hung over us. That had an impact. There's certain things you just can't define in this league. Some of the intangibles about the way a team functions with each other, about the dynamics, about their chemistry, about the way that they pull for each other, play for each other. These are hard things to define, and the advanced stats don't tell you it, and the tracking cameras can't tell you. Those all the ways we can measure the game, you still cannot account for what it does to a team's unity and spirit to have something like that happen. Maybe they're a 50-win team if Wiggins, in the time he was playing, didn't regress a little from the prior season. If Poole, whether because of the punch or not, didn't regress a little bit from the prior season. Maybe they're a 50-win team if they weren't still trying to pursue that 2-timeline strategy where they were kind of force-feeding James Wiseman in there. They're trying to get Kuminga and Moody into major roles. They were trying to really integrate the young guys while still riding the veteran core, and it just didn't work. and that they finally made the concession at midseason when they trade Weissman to get Gary Payton II back. And who knows what happens. Obviously, Payton had some injuries, but who knows what happens if they just kept him or taken a more veteran approach last offseason instead. So, if I'm going to go glass half full, I'm going to say they still had a pretty good season to get, to recover from everything that happened to them, to get to the second round, lose to a very good Lakers team that had refortified itself midseason. And, I think probably Warriors fans would consider it a disappointment because anything short of a championship is at this stage. And every year that you don't win a title with Steph is a missed opportunity on some level. But you think about some of the things that happened to the Warriors last season, and some were self-inflicted. There was a 50-win team, 50-plus win team lurking in there somewhere if some things go their way. So, it's on top of it all, the West has just gotten really... I don't want to say it's stacked. The West, during my 26 years of covering the league, the West has always been stacked. And we're actually in a time where it's a little bit of a lull, right? A lot of imperfect teams, but a lot of very, very good teams. Not dominant teams, not supreme teams, not historically great teams, but it's just a really thick crowd. And as we talk about, I'm sure we'll talk about this coming season, of course, too. There's just a lot of teams that are all kind of pretty close to each other. And so it's hard to break through. You need some things to break your way to emerge. And so, look, I might be an easy grader here, but I don't think that the Warriors season was a disappointment. I think it was a season where they had a lot of challenges, where Steph still played at an MVP level, where you had some ups and downs from Klay Thompson, Draymond still playing at a high level. I think the outline of a contender is still there, but obviously the clock is ticking based on their age.
Absolutely. That was a great answer that you brought up. And I mean, when we talk about the 2022 championship, that was one that I also did not see coming. I'm not gonna lie, like I was on the boat of like, okay, the dynasty is starting to like dwindle down. Like this is starting to be becoming the end, the beginning of the end. But and then that 2022, like you said, just boom, was like the little shock thing that just brought the Warriors and the Warriors fans right back to life. And then for this season, I do think that it's a bit of what do they call, like a championship hangover. It's really hard to be able to replicate that, and then especially like after like everything you said, the whole Wiseman situation they were trying to figure out with him not fitting the timeline and the Draymond Green punch and everything like that. So definitely, I agree with you. It'd be hard to call it a disappointing season just because so many things, I would say, so many things out of their control really led them to kind of have to have the season that they have. But what I wanted to ask you was, I want to touch real quick on that Kings series. Because me personally, I didn't think that was going 7. As much as the Kings, they came out first time making the championship, the playoffs in like 16 years, and they revitalized their offense. Mike Brown was doing great things. I give them all the credit. But I know that a lot of times, like when it comes to playoffs, it's about the teams who been there before, teams who are able to hunker down and know what it is, know how you're supposed to play during playoffs, and the Warriors are exactly that. So I thought that the Kings weren't really going to take them 7. So were you surprised that the series went 7, or was that about like where you thought it was going to go?
No, I picked the Warriors to win that series before it started, based largely on the fact that they had all the experience. The Kings hadn't made the playoffs, obviously, in 16 years. First time through for De'Aaron Fox and for a lot of his teammates. By record, the Kings obviously had the better season and were the stronger team or the more consistent team. But, the Warriors finished the season pretty strong. And I felt like, especially once they got Wiggins back to start the playoffs and they were whole, their starting 5, and this is something, again, we'll talk about as we shift to the coming season too. Like Curry, Klay Thompson, Wiggins, Draymond, Kevon Looney, that starting 5, and even take Looney out and then that 4-man unit, those are among the best lineups in the NBA still. And the bench was janky for the Warriors last season and might still be. I think they've actually improved the bench overall heading into next season, but they're starting five, and and then the playoffs. Obviously, you shorten your rotation. Your starters play longer minutes. Your stars obviously play as much as you can ride them. I'm always going to bet on Steph, Clay, Draymond, and that group over a young, unproven team that was just making their first foray into the playoffs. And like the Kings had a fantastic season, and I think really showed out well against the Warriors. And I don't think there was any shame in what goes down as an upset, but only by records and by standings. To me, it wasn't even a true upset. The Warriors were the better team. They just didn't have the kind of season that you would normally expect from them. So, I'm not surprised the Warriors came out of that series. That it went 7 was fantastic just because it was really fun. Like they played, both those teams played a really fun brand of basketball, and it was a fantastic series. And I think the Kings have nothing but promising seasons ahead for them because they're young and still improving. And if these two teams meet again next spring, who knows? It could be the reverse.
Absolutely, yeah. That definitely was one of those underrated series in that playoffs. That was great. It was definitely, as a basketball junkie, great to see 7-game series. But let's go ahead and move a little bit off of last season. Let's get into some of the official moves that they did so far this offseason. And I'd be remiss to not talk about the biggest move of them all, and that is the CP3 trade. The Warriors landed Chris Paul, and the Wizards got Jordan Poole, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Ryan Hollins, and a first round pick and a second round pick. So before we get into like the nitty gritty of it, just give me your thoughts on the trade. I guess from the Warriors side of things, if you want to talk about the Wizards as well, and then just overall, who do you think won and lost?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't judge anything on the Wizards side of it based on any prism other than that team had long ago, to me, hit a dead end and was a long overdue for a reset. Kudos to Michael Winger, their new GM and his crew for making all kinds of moves this summer to hit the reset button in a hard, in a really emphatic way. Like they needed to. It was overdue. So they send out Beal. Beal gets them Chris Paul. They certainly didn't need Chris Paul as a rebuilding team that's stripping it down. So flipping Chris Paul for Jordan Poole, I thought was a fantastic move for the Wizards. And it was, in some ways, I think a necessary move for the Warriors. There's so many different ways to look at this, John. You can start with just the mere fact that, and this is where I start with every conversation about the Warriors. And I feel this way about the Lakers with LeBron, the Warriors with Steph, the Blazers with Dame Lillard, even before he finally asked out. And we still don't know how that's going to resolve. But when you have a generational talent and a guy who's capable of winning championships, has won championships, you owe it to yourself and to that superstar and to your fans, to the game, to do everything possible to win in the moment, to be all in. And I think the Warriors got a little too cute with their 2-timeline thing for a while. And I understood it, but you got to be all in. And they've course corrected. And in part of that course correction was swapping Weissman for Gary Payton II. And the more dramatic part of the course correction, I think, is that Poole for CP3 swap. Chris Paul's 38. He's not the old Chris Paul. He's going to the Hall of Fame for sure. He's an all-time great. He's one of the best point guards we've ever seen. One of the best players we've seen. But he doesn't have to be that guy for the Warriors. He just has to be. Look, I don't know where Steve Kerr is going with this. Whether he's going to play them together, whether Chris Paul's going to come off the bench. It doesn't even really matter. He's going to be there in crunch time. He's going to play a lot of minutes. And that even if he doesn't score at the level that he once did, maybe defend at the level that he once did, Chris Paul is going to bring a level of intellect and stability, solid play, low mistake play that they really need, especially on their second unit. And so, as Jordan Poole, younger, more athletic, and very talented, and may have a very promising future in this league. But who gets you closer to, or puts you in a better position to win a 5th title with Steph? It's Chris Paul. I mean, and granted, look, this could backfire. Chris Paul at 38, anybody at 38 in this league. You're more injury prone. Stuff takes longer to recover from. Who knows how many minutes they'll actually even play him. And it makes them that much older. They were already a kind of an old team at their core. but I think this was necessary, John. I believe in this move. I think this was the right move to make on the fundamentals. And Chris Paul with that second unit, they're still trying to really unlock Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, the two young guys they still have, right? Like the two timeline thing was about Weissman, Moody, Kuminga, and Jordan Poole. Two of those four are now gone. They need the two who are still there to become really high level rotation guys or just reliable rotation guys. And Chris Paul, I think, is going to be able to bring more of that out of them than Jordan Poole, who is obviously more scorer than playmaker. So I think it helps them on a number of levels. Obviously, you can have a Hall of Fame point guard on the court for 48 minutes now. Steph's out. Chris Paul is still in, presumably. So I thought it was a great move. And then, there's the other aspects too, right? You could look at it through a salary cap lens. Jordan Poole, they signed to a massive extension and that had not kicked in yet. Now they offload that. Now they have a chance to avoid the so-called second apron in the future. They can, try to get some of their cap exceptions back. So there's some cap relief involved. And then there's just the elephant in the room, right? Which was, were Poole and Draymond ever going to be the same? Was a team that had both of them on it ever going to be able to recapture the feelings they had before the punch? So it to me, it worked on every level. Bold move by Mike Dunleavy Jr., the new GM, stepping in for Bob Myers after he resigned. Really bold move right out of the gate, and I admire the guts on that one too, because there is risk baked in.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was a really bold move. I love to see when like new NBA ownership or new NBA GM comes in and just makes a big splash. Like shout out, Matt Ishbia for the Suns came in and just made a splash. But that's for another episode. But what I want to talk about with you is, man, I'm really glad you brought up the Warriors avoiding that second apron by letting go of Jordan Poole before that contract hits, because I think that's a big part of the deal that not a lot of people are talking about. People are just kind of talking about the fit of Chris Paul, but avoiding that second apron, especially with the new CBA, is massive for the Warriors. But what I want to ask you is, so it seems like what you're thinking of it, like let's say you're in Steve Kerr's shoes, is looking like you want CP3 to come off the bench. Am I correct in assuming that, or what do you think that's going to happen? Because I've heard both sides of the story.
Yeah. Steve Kerr has a few more championship rings than I do. A lot more coaching experience than I do. So I'm not presupposing anything. My gut says Chris Paul off the bench, right? My gut says don't stray from the winning formula you have, which is Steph and Clay in the backcourt, Draymond and Kevon Looney up front, Wiggins at the wing. That unit, again, that five-man unit, put it up against any five-man unit in the NBA, they're still one of the best out there. And from a chemistry standpoint or just a functionality standpoint, I think I want to stick with that. I understand the argument for inserting Chris Paul and, also maybe, being sensitive to whether he wants to be a bench player ever, even at age 38, right? That he's a pretty prideful guy and understandably so. Maybe he doesn't want to do that. But I think just like, it's like when they brought in Andre Iguodala, right? And Iguodala had a really nice career in Philadelphia and Denver. And it was in moving him to the bench as kind of a point forward that it really unlocked a lot for the Warriors and put Iguodala eventually on the path to be, finals MVP. Granted, he ended up starting there at the end, but that's not the point. The point is Iguodala's willingness to sacrifice and to bring a playmaking element to their bench that they really needed at that time was really critical. So, yeah, I mean, look, Chris Paul and Steph Curry are going to play together at times within a game. They may even finish games with those two on the court. Probably, Clay slides to 3, Draymond to the 5, Wiggins at the 4, and maybe Looney on the bench. Although, Kevon Looney's like an incredible offensive rebounder and screen setter, great overall player for them, really underrated for them. It's going to be interesting. Like I'm very curious to see how Steve Kerr plays this. But yeah, as long as Chris Paul isn't going to, pout about it, and I got to think he probably won't. He's got a chance to finally win a championship. And he's coming onto a team with, a Hall of Fame point guard already in place. So, yeah, my gut says Chris Paul off the bench. But we'll see. We'll see how they play it.
Yeah, no, I mean Steve Kerr is a legendary coach, so I'm sure he's got a couple of tricks up his sleeve. But from my opinion, like I'm in agreement with you. I do think that it'd be better to bring him off the bench for a couple of reasons, right? I mean, Chris Paul, he's like I said, Hall of Fame point guard, has been used to being in that starting role, and not only is he used to being in that starting role, he's used to being in that starting role with the ball in his hands, initiating the offense. I think that if he is gonna start, like what are we gonna probably push Curry to the 2 and then have Curry play a bit more off ball, which he can do, but I think at that point, you're paying Stephen Curry to be that guy. And then another issue that I would have is like the attitude, like will he be able to take it? The defense, I think if you have a starting lineup of Chris Paul, Curry, she could slide Clay down, Wiggins, and then Dre at the 5. While that is like a great lineup, right? I could kind of reminds me of like that Def lineup that they were trying to run, but it's just very small. It's a very small lineup, especially in today's league. That does concern me. So that's kind of like what my next point that I wanted to get to is like, because if we look at the top of the West, right? Like we got the Denver Nuggets who got Nikola Jokic. So if you want to win a championship, you're going to have to go through those teams. We got the Lakers. I think they're going to be top of the league this year. Anthony Davis, if he's available, that guy, he's not available too much, but if he's available, you're going to have to get through a player like that. Even just the Memphis Grizzlies, when having a young Triple J, and I know he's taking strides this year playing in Team USA. I've heard a lot of news stories that he's been able to control his amount that he fouls. So if that is the case, I guess like even to end games or whatnot, like is that a concern to you that the Warriors really are going to have struggle getting past those top tier teams in the West without a real big?
The West is really interesting, right? The Nuggets are going to go into the season as the rightful favorites to repeat. They did lose a couple of key bench guys in Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, but the starting 5 is intact. They are young and still improving. There's no reason to think that the Nuggets shouldn't be the favorites still. That said, like I think the West race is really crowded right now. Like if you want to say that it's a race to knock off the Nuggets, that's one way of putting it. The other way to put it would be, well, if we pencil in the Nuggets as still number 1, the race to be number 2 is really crowded. So let's talk about the rest of those guys. The Lakers made the conference finals, got smoked in the conference finals, but made the conference finals. Finished the season as a much better team than the way they started the season because they finally traded Westbrook to replenish all the role players that they lost when they acquired Westbrook. And they had a good offseason. They're going to go into next season much stronger than they did last year. The Suns have created a super team of sorts. I'm not entirely sold on it, but they do have Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. And they did a pretty decent job of filling out the roster around them. It's basically a brand new team. I have no idea what their chemistry is going to look like. I have no idea if they're going to be able to defend at a high level. I have no idea what, just the general, how the pieces are all going to fall into place. It's always much trickier than just throw 3 stars together. And besides that, one of those stars, Durant, has got a lot of miles on him and basically plays 2/3 of every season at this stage of his career because he's always getting hurt. And that's what happens when you're in your mid-30s and when you've also come back from an Achilles. So I think I misspoke earlier and said he had an ACL. But the Achilles, he's come back from fantastically in the sense that he still plays at an extremely elite level. He's still one of the top 4 or 5 players in the NBA, but he just can't get through a season. So the Suns are in the mix though. We can laugh about the Clippers all we want, and we can say it's always about all these what ifs and asterisks, but if Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are on the court, who knows, maybe they still get James Harden. They're starting the season with Westbrook, who played pretty well for them. They're in this. They're in the conversation. So they're already, you've got Nuggets, Lakers, Suns, Clippers, Warriors. That's 5 teams in the running, and I haven't even gotten to the Kings and Grizzlies, who were the second and third best teams in the West last year, young and still improving. The Mavericks, who I don't know what the heck to make of the Mavericks, but they have Luka, and if Luka and Kyrie figure it out with the full training camp, can't dismiss them. I don't really think they're a contender, but they are a team to talk about. Timberwolves should be better than last season. Again, not entirely sold on them, but these are teams that are going to be strong. The Pelicans are going to be no worse than solid to maybe even good, or they showed flashes of great last season before Zion went down. So again, laugh all you want, asterisk all you want about whether Zion plays a full season, but if Zion's playing, along with Ingram, McCollum, the rest of that group, they're a really strong team. So the West it's gotten a lot better. And there are teams that are on the rise. I think the contender group after the Nuggets is really more like Lakers, Suns, Warriors, maybe the Clippers. I'm not entirely sure the Kings and Grizzlies are ready for it yet. And Ja Morant's going to spend the first 25 games suspended. But that's kind of the conversation. And it's a conversation with a lot of teams in it.
It is.
So,
It is.
but I do think the Warriors have absolutely enough to at least make a run to the conference finals and give themselves a chance to try to knock off the Nuggets.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know out of those top teams in the West, I think that yes, the Warriors are probably the smallest team out of all of them because pretty sure like they just picked up Dario Saric. He's like their biggest player on the team now at 6'10". But what the other teams don't have is they're gonna have to be able to keep up with the Warriors, and we know how notoriously fast the Warriors play, and with the small ball lineup, that does play that to an advantage. So it will be really, really interesting to see like where the Warriors, fall as far as like competing with these top teams in the West this next season. And then while we're on the topic of Dario Saric and the bigs, talk to me how you feel about that pickup and also the Draymond Green re-signing 4 years, $100 million. I personally thought he was gone, to be honest. I after not only just the whole situation. And like we see how he is in media talking about my guy LeBron. Like I thought he was out of here, but came back 4 years, $100 million, and then also to pick up on Dario Saric. What are your thoughts on those?
I never thought Draymond was leaving.
Oh, really?
No, never thought so. They've got a really great thing going there, and Draymond needed to at least position himself, at least create enough of a concern to make sure that he got the extension or the new contract that he wanted. He did take a pay cut, but he's still making a very respectable amount for a player of his caliber and at his age. They are clearly all in on keeping this core together now. Again, after flirting with the whole 2 timeline thing, and after there was, I think, some legitimate question a year ago about, well, how long are they going to hold on to Clay and Draymond? They're going to keep Steph forever, but is the rest of this in flux given contract situations, given payroll concerns, given luxury tax concerns, given age concerns, given the 2 timeline thing? But they clearly have recalibrated. And Joe Lacob, the Warriors owner, recently did a podcast with Tim Kawakami, my friend over at The Athletic, and said basically like, yeah, we expect to keep Clay now too. Like Clay's going into his walk year, but they, Lacob made it pretty clear that they expect to either re-sign Clay next offseason or maybe even extend. And I think Kawakami's sense of it, the way he wrote it up was like, yeah, don't be surprised if they extend Clay before the season starts. So they are all in on keeping that core together and riding it for as long as they can. And again, I think that's the right approach. Draymond's still playing at an incredibly high level, obviously, especially defensively and as a playmaker. And yes, they have some size concerns. They've always had size concerns, ever since the first run back in 2015, and that comes and goes. But, Looney plays big. You don't want to play Draymond all of his minutes at the 5, but he can play plenty there. And Saric gives them something that they needed. He's a big man who can stretch the defense, who can shoot the 3, who can pass, who can do a few things with the ball in his hands. He fits their dynamic, their style much better than, say, JaMychal Green did. And so they're trying to kind of recapture some of what they had 2 seasons ago, like when, Otto Porter filled that role, right, as a pseudo big who could shoot the 3 and do a few other things. So I like the Saric pickup. Could they use one more big, like, somebody between 6'10" and 7 feet, a more traditional looking big man? I mean, maybe, but I feel like we talk about that all the time with the Warriors, and they often, find a way to succeed without that. It was a bigger problem against the Warriors with Anthony Davis, right? And a fully functioning Anthony Davis, and you could say the same when they're facing Jokic and maybe a couple others. I think it's a legit question. I'm not sure who else who all is out there to pick up. I know some people might maybe wanted to them to go back down the road with JaVale McGee again, but that didn't come to pass. McGee may be past his expiration date, but maybe that's a move they still make, right? Like maybe they find one the one more signing or one minor trade to get them a little bit of more strength or size in the front court.
Absolutely. Yeah. I immediately when I seen that JaVale had, got let go in the situation, I was thinking like, man, that's kind of perfect for the Warriors. But like how you said, he is a little bit past his expiration date, and pretty sure he got picked up by another California team, the Kings. Yeah. And then I do just want to, kind of talk about the Dario Saric situation, because I think that like, while he's not the ideal player you wanted, because like how you mentioned, when you face Anthony Davis, when you face Jokic, when you face even over there on the East, like a Joel Embiid, a Giannis, like I feel like you're still small, but like how you said, he does allow them to stretch the floor. And last season in the playoffs, I feel like that was a point where the Warriors were kind of getting exposed on, is whenever Draymond and Kevon Looney were on the court at the same time, they kind of like exposed the two non-shooters on the court. So I think adding a player like Dario Saric, which he has the height, and you can't just leave him open out there like how they were leaving JaMychal Green open. Like JaMychal Green was just getting open looks. On a player like Dario Saric, like he has the ability to knock that down. So you can't leave you can't leave that open. So I'm definitely in agreement with you right there. I think he's a solid pickup for them. But this is I guess this is some old news. I know Wiseman's been traded, but I gotta get your feel. Like I know you say you're not necessarily a Warriors fan, but you covered the Warriors, for a long time. You know a lot about them. How did you feel about the Wiseman situation? Because I'll be honest, like me personally, I'm a big believer in Wiseman. I've been a big believer in him since his college days. Like how you said, he just never fit the timeline. And when you have generational players like Curry, LeBron's, Kevin Durant's, you got to go all in to match their window so that you can win. I'm in agreement with that. But I'm hearing Warriors fans out here talking about like, oh, he's a bust. Oh, he never could have worked out, all this and that, when he just never got a chance because he never fit the timeline. What's your thoughts on Wiseman? And were you sad to see him go?
I did a big feature on Wiseman heading into last season for Sports Illustrated. And so I've spent some time with him and, talked to a lot of people for that story. I like Wiseman a lot. I think he's about the right things. I think he's a bright young player, committed, went through a lot personally, professionally, health-wise. His first couple of years, obviously, even his college experience was rocky. He's been through a lot, and I think that ultimately, will serve him well, because I think he's kind of figured out how to persevere. He was really patient with the way the Warriors used him as a guy who was, picked as high as he was, to have to basically wait his turn, ride the bench. That's tough. Even if you're on a championship team, the upside is he got to be part of a championship. The upside is he got to learn from some of the best players ever to play. The downside is he really didn't have much of a chance to learn and evolve and thrive and make his mistakes and get his reps. But, that's the NBA sometimes. I hate the term bust anyway. Busts aren't about, the term bust is almost is very, very rarely about the player. The player is not a bust. If a high pick busted, it's on the team usually. They maybe picked the wrong guy, or they picked they simply picked him too high, or maybe they didn't develop him. Maybe they didn't give him the right environment. But I don't like that term in general. And I think in Wiseman's case, it was just the wrong player at the wrong time with the wrong team. He may turn into a really great player. Like the guy has got some incredible skills and physical tools, height and length, and he's graceful on his feet. He can get to the rack. He can put the ball on the deck a little bit. He may not have the defensive instincts right now to guard multiple positions, but he's got the physical ability, the athleticism to guard multiple positions, which is critical in today's NBA. He can be a tremendous shot blocker and rebounder. You saw him put up some pretty big numbers in Detroit, but he just couldn't do that with the Warriors because there was too much riding on every possession. And also the Warriors play this really intuitive style that for a really young player is hard to kind of adapt to. He needs to be in more of a traditional kind of just pick and roll kind of offense that's not so much read and react. He's not there yet. He might get there, but he wasn't there yet. And the Warriors weren't the right environment for him to really grow into that player. So I think the future is still really bright for James Wiseman, whether that's in Detroit, whether it's somewhere else. I don't think it's anyone's fault in particular. It just was the wrong place for him to grow into the player that he can become.
That's perfectly put, Howard, because that's how I feel about it too. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm high on him, and I have this take that the family out there that's been listening for some time, they've been tuning into my show. They know I've been saying this, and I mean, he's 1, 2, 3, like 4 or 5 years into his career, so it might be this take might be starting to get a little old, but when he first came into the league, I'm not gonna lie, I used to say, watch, like, if the Warriors develop him right, Wiseman could be like the next Anthony Davis. He could pick and roll, he could pick and lob, he could play some defense. I was very high on him. Now I don't maybe that take is a little worn out now.
It's not though. I'm gonna get you off the hook with one number here, John. 84. That's the number of games he's played. He's barely played one full NBA season. So to judge him on that, I think is foolish. Like, you can't, if anybody's saying it's already over, it's done, he's a bust, he's never going to be, like, come on, folks. He's played 84 games. He has to stay healthy. There's been some bad luck along the way, but you can't judge any young player after 84 games of their career. He's going to stay healthy at some point, maybe starting this coming season with the Pistons. And I think he's going to be a really good player. I don't know what the ceiling is. I don't know how far he goes. I don't, I can't see the future, but he's 22 and he's played 84 games. Like, I think folks need to give him some time to stay on the court and evolve.
Come on, people, give my guy Wiseman some time. But all right, so then that I just wanted to get your thoughts on Wiseman, because I'm a big Wiseman fan. But now let's get back to the young guys on the Warriors, right? Because that's someone we need to talk about. Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, two great players who have a lot of potential. Like how you talked about Chris Paul, I think is going to be the key to unlocking, especially Kuminga. But my question to you is, who to you is more likely to have a breakout season this season, Kuminga or Moody?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably Kuminga, only in that he probably gets more. There's a more natural slot for him in the big man and wing rotation. We talked about this earlier. They don't have a lot of size, and Kuminga, combination of size, athleticism, just that incredible explosiveness he has, the ability to defend multiple positions. They're going to need all of that. And, Moody can do some things too. And certainly I think, is a good off the ball player and shooter. But, they've got a lot of guys to rotate through the guard positions in particular. And so I just think Kuminga's got more potential runway there, more minutes available. I was looking at what the rotation could look like, right? So if we assume the same starting five, Curry, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, Looney, Chris Paul's the first one off the bench, assuming that he's on the bench. Gary Payton II is going to get a ton of minutes. Sarge is going to get minutes. That's 8 already. They signed Corey Joseph, a good veteran, backup guard. They may need to plug him in at times. And then you've got Kuminga and Moody. So there's your, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's like 6 bench players. So there's your top 11. Kuminga and Moody have to make a case for themselves ahead of, on some nights, Chris Paul, Gary Payton, Dario Saric. And I think they will. And I think they'll be integrated. And I think, like last season, the Warriors will probably try to give them as much rope as they can early on to help let them establish themselves as reliable rotation guys, because The more you can play them, the better off you are. You need fresh legs. You need young legs. You don't want to burn out Chris Paul. And, Darius Saric is now, 2 years removed from an ACL. So you don't want to lean on the vets too heavily. And for that matter, you don't want to lean on the starting five vets, especially the three core guys. So if they can get Kuminga and Moody jump started this season, they're that much better off.
Yeah. I really do want to see a crazy breakout season from Kuminga. I'm not gonna lie, I've been another player I've been just a big believer in. The comp that when I think of Kuminga, I kind of think of just maybe not as skilled, but just a young, raw, talented Kawhi Leonard. Just he has all the intangibles. Big. He's big. He's athletic. He can really get it done. I just want to see him be able to translate that into the game. And then I also do want to see my guy Steve Kerr. I feel like you like how you said, right? Like he gives them rope early in the season, but like later on in the season, like if they make one mistake, I feel like those young guys just get pulled so quickly. And maybe that is because of the timeline situation. It's like, we're trying to accomplish something great here. We don't necessarily got time to be putting these building blocks down. So maybe I can understand that. But this next season, I do think that Kerr has to definitely, give Kuminga and Moody a lot more rope, even later on in the season, because those young guys just got to play through their mistakes. That's the best way to learn in the NBA, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's one of these eternal questions, and I've thrown this at coaches many times over the years. It's is it sink or swim? Is it earn your minutes? Like what's the best approach when you've got good young talent, and those guys need time to get their reps, to make their mistakes, to play through it. But how much time? How many mistakes can you play through? Are you better off having to earn your way into more minutes and really hold them to a high standard and make them beat out the vets for a minute? Like it's a tough thing. It's a tough balance for any coach in any situation. And I think when the stakes are as high as they are for the Warriors, which is that every season is championship or bust, it just makes it that much more difficult. So I don't knock Kerr for any, the way he's used these guys. I think that's just a really difficult needle to thread, and with very little room for error. And we saw what happened last season, right? Like they tried to give the young guys as much as they could. And it's not the young guys' fault entirely that they only win 44 games and lose in the second round. But like among the elements that I listed earlier in the show, that was one of the things that I think, produced a less than stellar season for the Warriors. They really were trying to go all in on the young guys, and they weren't ready yet.
Absolutely. Timeline and fit is everything, man. That's why I was saying in the draft, you always just draft fit. Never draft for talent. You draft for the fit. But Howard, as we kind of start to wrap up here, what I want to get some early predictions, if that's okay with you. If you're down to give me some early predictions,
oh boy,
for next season. But let's keep into mind like I want to get early predictions, but I also want to hear from you like, is the championship window done? Like how you said, this has been a dynasty. This has been going on for a long time. Bob Myers just left. He's the architect of this team. He's the one who really kind of put this team together. But what I want to know is, as Curry gets older, as Bob Myers leave, as the rumors getting higher and higher, as the noise is getting louder over there in San Francisco, like you tell me, like, is the championship window closed, or do they still have another run to be able to get there?
I still haven't closed the championship window personally for LeBron and the Lakers. And I thought that was really perilously close to getting slammed shut. I believe in the greats. I do. Like LeBron's not dead and buried until he says so. And same thing with Steph. Like these are guys who, if you can just get them the right support, and it's the Lakers have really struggled with that over the last couple of years, the last 3 years since they won the last championship. Like just get those guys the right supporting cast, and they can still carry it. It was really interesting to see. So Seth Partnow, who I think you probably met or saw speak a couple times at Sports Business Classroom. Seth writes for The Athletic, one of the smartest people writing about the game, I think, and views everything through both an analytics lens as well as a basketball lens. he does his annual tiers of the NBA. They're not rankings, they're just tiers. So they're groupings, right? And he does 5 tiers that encompass like the top 125 players. And Seth does this every, summer, late summer. Steph is still 1A, tier 1A. It's him, Jokic, and Giannis. So Steph is still considered the guy that if you just have Steph, you've got a chance because he puts you in the conversation. They don't have anybody in tier 2, but he has Draymond in tier 3, Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins in tier 4, and then Clay, Gary Payton II, and Kevon Looney in tier 5. So that's 7 of the Warriors that made his top 125, 4 of whom are in those top 4 tiers. That's a pretty good case, at least on paper, to say that this team is in the mix. I didn't go through to see how many other teams have that many guys in the top 3 or 4 tiers, but I'm going to guess it's not that many. So the Warriors are in there, I think. They lost Dante DiVincenzo, who was really good for them. That hurts. But I think Saric is an upgrade over JaMychal Green. I think Chris Paul should be an upgrade over Jordan Poole. Not in stats, not in production, not in athleticism or youth, but just in functionality, just in what he's going to bring to the table and the reliability that he brings. If you assume a full season from Andrew Wiggins this time instead of 37 games, if we can assume health from their core 3 guys, they're in there. They're absolutely in there. Those are a lot of assumptions. And because of the ages of those guys, you never know. There's a lot of volatility there, but I'm gonna assume health as we go into a new season, especially because like Steph's been pretty damn durable, right? Draymond Green's been durable. Klay Thompson, since coming back from the 2 major injuries, has been pretty durable. Kevon Looney's been durable. Wiggins, durable. Like I think they get the benefit of the doubt on that count. So yeah, I think they're in there. I think they're in the conversation. I don't think the championship window is closed. I do think that the Nuggets are the favorites going in. And I do think that the Warriors are going to have to scrap and claw against those teams I mentioned earlier, whether it's the Suns, the Lakers, possibly the Clippers. It's going to be a dogfight again, but like, yeah, I'm never ruling out Steph Curry when he's still playing at the level that he is. I'm not ruling out the team with 4 rings.
Yeah. It's definitely hard to rule out those great players. They could make it happen. And I mean, we all doubted them in 2022 and they made it happen. So I think in some teams, if you could just get to the playoffs, like they'll be able to handle it when they get there. But all right, well, you guys heard it here first. But last question that we like to ask here, Howard, is can you give us a word or a phrase to describe how you felt as, I know you're not a Warriors fan, but I guess covering the Warriors, how did you feel last year? Give me a word or a phrase how you felt last year, and then give me another word or a phrase to describe about how you're feeling coming into this next year.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple different thoughts about like a one-word description for last season. I mean, I think on some level this may sound counterintuitive, but I think I was impressed overall. They went through a lot, and again, some of it's self-inflicted. Draymond punching Poole, but they went through a lot, and I think there were plenty of times last season where it was more than logical to write them off, and they still make it to the second round, and kept themselves at a level where you thought, you know what, a couple things break right, they're right back in this. So I was impressed overall. Despite, and listen, teams don't repeat as champions very often these days. And the last time the Warriors did, they had one of the best rosters in the history of the game with Durant still there. So, it was a lot to expect that they were going to repeat. I think I was overall impressed. I think going into next season, the one word would probably be intrigued. If I were a fan, I might even say hopeful. I think there's reason for Warriors fans to be optimistic. I really do. For everything that we just covered over the last half hour or so, I just think that the window is getting narrower for sure. I don't know, this is the thing, you never know in this league with the superstars, and especially with guards, you never know when they're just going to kind of fall off a cliff. Like a guy can be, all NBA one season and the next season he's just kind of ordinary. You see it happen all the time. And guys play deeper and at a high level deeper into their careers than they ever have. We've seen it with LeBron. We've seen it with Steph because of all of the modern sports science and training and attention to nutrition and year-round training. Like they're not. It's not like in the old days where you hit 32, 33 as a guard and you're just done. So Steph is still playing at an incredibly elite level. That means they're in the conversation. And I think there's enough variables that could break in their favor that I'm at a minimum intrigued by what they can do next season, and would be more than happy as a neutral observer to see a Warriors Nuggets conference finals because that would be a lot of fun.
Wow, man. Wow, man. Well, you guys heard it here first, man. My guy Howard, he's impressed from last season and he's intrigued coming into this season. Howard, man, I just want to thank you for coming on here and just talking some hoops with us, talking Warriors. I do want to give you the floor. You have any last things that you want to say? Anything you want to shout out?
No, if anybody wants to follow my work, of course, you can always find me on Twitter at Howard Beck. I have an authory page, which is where all of my writing is, and all of my writing from really the last 20 years is. That's author with a Y on the end, authory.com/Howard Beck. And everything I've been writing for GQ Sports, everything I previously wrote for Sports Illustrated, the New York Times, it's all at Bleacher Report, it's all there. And I think that's all I have to plug today. I may have other news coming soon on the writing and podcasting front, but too soon to get into that yet. But stay tuned. I'll probably say something on Twitter when that's all final in the next couple of weeks, I hope. So.
Yes, sir, man. Yes, sir. You guys heard it here first, man. Stay tuned. And if you guys want to keep up with Howard and all his social medias and all his work, I'm going to link everything in the description down below. So just go check out the description. You're going to be able to find his Twitter page, Instagram page, all his work he's ever did. Go check him out. Great guy, great author. But for me, man, that's it, man. Like I said, I appreciate you. For the family out there, make sure you guys go check out Howard. Go show him some love. Go like and subscribe. But for now, we out of here, y'all. Peace.